Welcome back to another issue and an exciting follow-up to the last video, and trust me when I say it only gets more crazy from here, as you can see from the cover. But one of the things I will say is I don't like how they basically kind of spoiled it with the title and cover art showing that Spidey comes out on top. I'm not sure if this is a regular thing that they did in the 60s, but it's too late to complain now. Let's jump into the video. We open where we left off last video with Peter tied up in the revelation of the Green Goblin, aka Norman Osborn. With Peter still trying to stall for time, he mentions Harry, Norman Osborn's son. You know, the classmate from last issue with the same hairline? I bet their favorite fast food chain is McDonald's, you know? Cause the logo matches the hairline. Nah, never mind. Bad joke. Peter continues on with his plan, now mentioning Harry, which causes Norman to panic and threaten him. Still going on, Peter keeps him talking, calling Norman crazy and how Harry was right about how he's recently changed. Norman, frustrated, yells, then says that nobody understands why he became the Green Goblin, which leads me to think it's storytelling time. So buckle up, boys and girls, it seems like we're about to get a backstory. And so it begins. We quickly learn that Norman Osborn lost his wife when Harry was just a baby, and that led him to become the businessman he is today. He wanted to provide a certain lifestyle for Harry, but as we can see, Harry wanted more than just gifts and ball games. He wanted his father to be there. We also see how Professor Strom and Norman's relationship fell out. Little side note, Strom was a villain a few issues back before I started making videos, so if you're confused about that, that's why. We continue on with a question from Peter that I'm pretty sure we all were thinking of. Why did Norman turn to crime? He was already rich and successful. And so our backstory continues. One night, Norman had found some notes in Strom's desk, which contained some strange looking formulas, and he was not looking to let them go to waste, so he put them to use, and spent the whole night working on it, further neglecting his son Harry, who wanted him to go to parents' night. Now at some moment through the night, he got to the point where the formula started to turn green and bubble. I'm not too sure if this was supposed to happen that way, but after the explosion went off in Norman's face, he ended up in the hospital for weeks. The surgeons had come to the conclusion that the damage was deep within his brain, but his body would recover. Harry ultimately blamed himself for what happened to his father that night, and Norman, well, he became even more distant and cruel. He was obsessed with how smart and stronger he had suddenly become, and believed that with the scientific devices and chemical company he owned, he had become the greatest costume criminal of all time. I know, absolutely stupid, right? Almost every villain in the 60s comes to this conclusion somehow, but for the Goblin, I'll give it a pass, since bro is actually insane. Now with his costume done, he chooses the color green, I guess because it was the last color he saw before the explosion turned him insane. And with that, we conclude our little backstory. We return to the present with the Green Goblin announcing that he wanted Spider-Man to be his first victim, because if he defeated him, the underworld will have no choice but to respect him. And I'm gonna be honest, things aren't looking too good for Peter right now. The Quill still seem to have a tough grasp on him, and it looks like the Goblin is ready to bring things to a close. Cutting over to Aunt May and her friend Anna, we see that she's growing more and more worried about Peter as the night drags on. Her friend Anna tries to calm her down, saying he might be out and just lost track of time, even bringing up how her niece Mary Jane, and yes I mean the Mary Jane, that still continues to be teased but not shown as of yet, occasionally comes up home late. They even try to call Triple J to see if Peter is still at the Bugle, but just gets the typical spill as usual after screaming that Peter isn't there. At this point, Aunt May knows something has to be wrong with her nephew, as this is definitely out of his character. Switching scenes, we finally see Betty Brant again after her disappearance these last few issues, and it looks like she's on her way back to New York after up and leaving. We also see here on this panel how the radio mentions Spider-Man has been missing for the past few days, which doesn't really make sense since he literally has only been missing for at most a few hours. Last video we saw how after his fight with the Goblin, he immediately got taken to the Goblin's lair, which they stated only took about 40 seconds, and this issue picks up right where that one left off, like no time skips were mentioned. So unless I'm going crazy like Norman Osborn, I think that was a mistake. Please let me know in the comments. Anyway, after Betty hears that on the radio, she instantly feels uneasy after events that took place in a prior issue with Dr. Octopus, resulting in her brother's death, which she wrongly blames Spider-Man for, while of course unknowingly realizing that Spider-Man is also Peter Parker, her ex-boyfriend. After some last few poetic and ironic words from Betty, we cut back to the action, where Peter has now goaded Goblin into yet another monologue, with him now trying to convince Peter that those L's wasn't L's, they were lessons. So we begin with the first time that they fought. Starting with the Enforcers, a group of goons Goblin hired to take Spidey down, but ultimately ended up losing, or the time Human Torch and Spidey teamed up to put an end to the Goblin schemes. Then right after that, he made the same mistake twice by hiring another set of goons, which of course couldn't stop the wall crawler. And last but not least, their last fight before the prior issue, where the Goblin actually kind of won before being interrupted from another villain known as the Crime Master in a previous issue, which I recommend you guys go check out. Now during all this reminiscing, Peter manages to free one of his hands, but Goblin pulls a power play and actually frees Peter himself to finally set the stage and prove he is the better out of them both. With Peter now free, Goblin tells him to put on the mask and become Spider-Man, and Peter does just that right before being caught off guard from one of Goblin's stun bombs, but quickly recovers and spins up a web net, bouncing back the other stun bomb Goblin threw at him. Unfazed, Goblin quickly zaps it out of the air, then follows up on his jet glider before warning Spider-Man, basically toying with him at this point, and all Peter could think about is no matter what the outcome, he's lost. Cause even if he defeats the Goblin, it won't stop the fact that he knows his secret identity already. With Peter caught in the stress, Goblin tries to swoop in and finish him off, only to catch a hook and get knocked off his glider, which at this point seems to cause more harm than good for him in every adaptation. With the Goblin finally grounded. See what I did there? The fight seems to be over, but it turns out to be another one of his tricks as he suddenly grabs one of the fallen wires from his now crashed jet glider. Thank God for that, by the way, for him and Spidey. Then trips him up with it, which I'm not gonna lie, the current from that had to hurt like hell. Goblin continues to try and hit him with everything he's got, but Spidey jumps to the ceiling and dodges every shot before coming down, which seems to be what the Goblin wants. Spidey now caught on the ground, Goblin fires off one of his most potent Goblin blasts, but to the Goblin's surprise, Spidey rips a metal bolted chair out of the ground to block it, then throws it at the Goblin before he quickly dodges it. Now frustrated, the Goblin realizes he should have finished him off when he had the chance and blames Spider-Man for why he talks so much. Like, come on bro, are you serious? But now suddenly learning his lesson, because remember, the Green Goblin doesn't take any L's, tosses some battery-powered bats at Spidey to distract him while he powers up his fully automated Goblin cannon. But just before it can hit him, you guessed it, Spidey dodges it. I'm not too sure why the Goblin thought that this was gonna hit Spidey. Bro has been dodging his Goblin blast left and right, literally seconds before this, and he's aware of Spider-Man's spider sense. But hey, the Goblin do be crazy. After dodging the blast, Spidey quickly lands what seems to be a drop kick on Goblin, sending him flying towards some live wires and chemical valves, and gets caught in another. The Green Goblin, now lying still on the floor as the smoke starts filling up the building, seems to be dead. Spider-Man goes to check on him, but is still cautious as he thinks this could be another one of the Goblin's tricks. Feeling a pulse, Spider-Man is relieved to find out that he's not dead, but is still worried that now, even after defeating him, as mentioned earlier, the Goblin still knows his secret identity. With Spidey still in his thoughts, the Goblin mumbles his son Harry's name and is confused as to where he even is. With Spidey still on his toes, thinking it's another trick, ultimately trusts his spider sense as no warning is coming from it, and believes that the Green Goblin, aka Norman Osborn, has really lost a few years of his memories, most likely up until the point of the blast that turned him into the Goblin. Firefighters now banging down the doors, Spider-Man quickly decides to give Norman another chance and changes him out of his costume into some regular clothes before they can enter. With Norman now out of his Goblin costume, Spidey realizes that he has to get rid of it somehow and fast, so he tosses it into the fire, seemingly putting an end to the Green Goblin forever. With the door now broken down, the firefighters enter, only to see Spider-Man helping Norman Osborn to get out of the burning building. Still suspicious, they want answers, but Spidey leads them, telling them that Norman Osborn was a hero that helped him take down the Green Goblin. Now rushing home to Aunt May, Peter sees Dr. Brownwell's car outside, which sends him in a panic. He quickly enters the window to his room and changes, blaming himself for everything that's happened to him with Uncle Ben, Betty Brant, and now Aunt May. And despite all his powers, he'd give them away in a heartbeat to just be a normal everyday guy. Entering the house, Dr. Brownwell gives Peter the rundown on how worried and stressed his Aunt May has been, and even kind of scolds him for being so inconsiderate. Imagine having the day bro just had and being told you're being inconsiderate. Like, bro, I don't know how Peter deals with all this while crashing out. Like, worryingly waiting by his Aunt May for hours, she finally awakes and is relieved to see her nephew is alright, and the same goes for Peter with his aunt. She asks Peter where he's been, and he reluctantly lies to her and says he's been studying with his classmate all night. Which, guys, if anyone tells you that, they're probably a superhero that fights criminals and supervillains all night, or the opposite, so yeah, keep that in mind. Continuing on, Aunt May does what she does best and starts taking care of Peter again. Even though he is fine and thinks she should rest, he lets her continue to ease her mind. Then we see our last panel of the issue, and it ends with Norman and Harry, father and son, looking towards a brighter future. Alright guys, you know what time it is. We're at the end of the issue where I give my thoughts and rate it between a 1 out of 10. And this one was something. I'm still not happy with the spoiler and the cover art, and there were some obvious mistakes which didn't make sense to me, which were pointed out. But putting that aside, I do enjoy the dynamic between the Goblin and Spider-Man, and just how the Goblin overall pushes Spider-Man to his limits. When bro shows up, you just know something's gonna go down, and it's always in a way that not only furthers Spider-Man's character development, but Peter's also. But enough yapping, I'm gonna give this one an 8.5. Well, that's all the time we got for this video. Remember, stay hydrated, read comics, and be true to yourself. Peace.